I made fish massively overpowered in Europa Universalis by buffing not only its trade value, but the modifiers it gives to anyone who is lucky enough to have a province or two that produces it. You heard me right when I said I buffed its trade value. Fish is now worth a whopping 10 gold, which is more than any other trade good in the world. Even better yet, if you are savvy enough to get the bonus for trading the most, you'll be able to get some incredibly powerful naval buffs. I'm hoping to make more videos related to trade goods like this, and if you enjoy that idea, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel and ding that little bell so you don't miss it when they come out. Question of the day: whenever you are playing a trade-focused game in EU4, if you play those sorts of games, what is the nation you usually go for? I'm super keen on the Netherlands. I think they are an incredibly fun nation to play, especially since they got their update back in the day. So that's my pick, but I'm curious about yours. Let us know in the comments below. So as you can see here, this island of Fyn produces fish, and it is 10 ducats is the value of that trade good. And look at those bonuses. The local dev cost minus 100, which is minus 100 of the base cost. So it's going to be very cheap, only 5 mana to develop this farmlands province. But there's also local trade power, local production efficiency, local manpower, and sailor modifiers, as well as a 4+4 to naval force limit. So Denmark has a navy. They definitely have a navy. Let's take a look at what they have. They have 44 ships out of 48, and they've got a lot of galleys, so nobody's going to be contending with them on the naval front. Now, obviously, we need to keep our eyes on nations that start with a lot of fish in 1444, like the Danish, the Norwegians, a couple in the Swedes, northern places of Germany like Pomerania, and over here in the Hansa. So there's a lot of that, and then there's also quite a bit down here in Italy, specifically in Naples, but a bit in Aragon as well as Popeman. So it's spread out mostly in Europe, to be honest with you. There's not a whole lot. But over here there's a bit, and then there's some in lots in Japan, of course. Japanese eat a lot of fish, of course, and some in China, Korea. But I don't really know if that's going to lead these guys to the sort of snowballing that we're going to expect out of some of the nations in Europe. But of course, there's only one way to find out what happens, and that is to turn it up to speed 5 and unpause. Now, I'm curious because Denmark usually has to fight Sweden early on if they decide to go down the right. And I think that Sweden is like hard-coded to be disloyal since Lions of the North. So I imagine that that's going to be a thing. But if Denmark has naval dominance, like England and the people who usually would get involved won't be able to. So that's something we definitely have to keep an eye on. And yeah, it definitely looks like Denmark is going to be the protagonist of this story, with Sweden being the antagonist and their big bad allies of Austria, Poland, and Lithuania, who is an independent nation not under the personal union of Poland. So Denmark is going to have to fight them. But like I said, if Denmark will hold off over here, they won't be able to siege down Denmark's capital. So maybe they'll be a little more eager to prevent that PU from falling. But if they just march around here, then they're going to be able to occupy a lot of their land, and they might give it up. But that trade value is a quite impressive 13.7 in the English channel, 22.4 over here, which is competitive with all these other ones. It's actually the most valuable trade node in the whole world. So that is pretty dang good. And since then, Lithuania has gone under the personal union, which removes them, quote unquote, from the support independence. But Denmark is almost guaranteed to be declared war by Sweden. It's just a matter of time. And meanwhile, down south of the Northmen, we have Castile, who has gotten a personal union on Navarra, who is being attacked by Aragon and their personal union of Naples, Castile calling in their allies of Portugal and England. So Aragon about to get absolutely steamrolled for a 1-province minor PU that they contested. So feels Paradox AI, man. Now we have a union of the Iberian variant here, with also including Naples. And that means that Castile is now in charge of all of this fish over here, as well as over here, all of this fish down here. Now they're not collecting in Genoa, so that's obviously not as helpful for them, but there is quite a bit in the Sevilla nodes still. So Castile/Spain is probably going to be one of the major contenders this time around, and I reckon Denmark will be, but we haven't seen Sweden break free yet. They've taken some land up in Russia. They attacked and took 1 province over here, but then Muscovy came in and occupied everything else from the Livonians, so that's a thing. But yeah, we still don't have a runaway nation just yet. Meanwhile, it doesn't matter how much fish there is in the world. If China cannot control any of it, they're going down. They're actually getting occupied by a ton of rebels. And you can actually see the hordes are coming, occupying Beijing even. So yeah, Ming is dead. 9 units. 9. Yeah, they're dead. And did a bit of a big brain move. It actually looks like Denmark took a preemptive attack against Poland. This is an offensive war for Denmark, attacking Poland with the coalition casus belli, calling in Pomerania, Riga, and the Livonians. But I don't know if that's actually that good of an idea, because Sweden is disloyal, so Sweden is not going to be offensive. That's the way that works. If you have a subject who's disloyal, they will only defend their own land. They will never do like an offensive battle for you on enemy territory. So we'll see how it goes. Keep in mind, their manpower pool is very big, and they are gaining big chunks of manpower, a ton of manpower from these provinces, 5,700 per year from this one province. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of manpower to be coming out of this region. And to add to the non-stop action that this run has actually been, Denmark has been attacked by Muscovy, calling in their subject swarm to broaden out that front line, and it's for a conquest war for like something up here. So it's gonna be pretty interesting. They're winning the Poland war. They are definitely losing the Muscovy war, but I don't really know. Most of this land up here is very low development, so they'll probably peace out Poland sooner or later, and then they'll be able to turn their focus, because remember, Sweden will defend in their lands, but I would be very surprised if they won both of them. But if they do win both of them, then it probably is going to allow them to start kind of popping off in the long term. And meanwhile, down to the south, the other fishy nation in Castile has expanded a bit into the Maghreb. Another nation that has quite a bit of fish would be the Mamluks, and they're actually doing quite well on their own. They've taken a ton of land in Arabia. They've pushed up into Karaman and well down into Ethiopia, as well as into Fezzan. So the Mamluks are having a pretty good run as well. If they can stop the Ottomans from growing early, they could probably end up becoming one of the major powers in the long term. There's also a lot of fish around the Persian Gulf, as well as over here by Oman. Not a whole lot in India. Southeast Asia has a bit, but I'm not really seeing anything super crazy popping out over here. But yeah, Ming has definitely started to collapse. No surprise. Jiangsu has pushed in, as well as Cochin. And Beijing is still under the Ming, but not for long, because it's being occupied in another war. So they're going to crumble continually. There's not really much to say about it. But the other fish guys over here, like this guy right here, has like 5 fish provinces. We'll see if he can do anything with it. Probably not, because AI hordes are kind of stupid, but you know, it is what it is. Now, I don't really know what this is all about. In the coalition war, Riga was given a few of their provinces that are cores of theirs in Prussia, but it's Riga, who's a 1 province minor. So I don't know about that one. These red boys were kicked out of Poland as well, and now Muscovy has kicked Denmark, all except for the Kola Peninsula, out of Russia. So they went in, but then they got kicked back out. So Muscovy may end up being strong, but Denmark didn't really lose a whole lot of power. There's very little up here that they were gaining from it. But yeah, Poland, Lithuania is not really going to be strong for at least for a long time. They may end up coming back from it. But meanwhile, Austria is working on a conquest war against Bohemia, and they're losing. So this is a little bit of a wacky timeline. I don't think that changing fish would really affect that a whole lot. They do have 1 fish province down here in Trieste. But that's it. Denmark is doing pretty well. They actually lost Sweden. Sweden is completely independent, and they're currently in the process of steamrolling through Poland, Lithuania with the help of Muscovy in a second war. The leader of Sweden, Cannon Fodder I Grubenhelm. What a good name that is, huh? If you guys are wondering who Cannon Fodder I is, he is actually one of the homies, as well as one of my patrons, but that's beside the point. Anybody who has supported me on Patreon or joined the channel to become one of the homies has their name entered into a list that selects randomly to be put as the leader and or the heir of one of these nations in the game. You can see Ricardo over here. We can see Martin de Amelida Herzberg over here. King RJ Pilot of France. If that sounds good to you, check out the join button below the video or the Patreon linked in the description. The Mams are continuing to do pretty well in their region, but the Ottomans are also doing quite well. They look like they've actually pushed the Mams out of Anatolia and Antioch, and has pushed all the way up into Venice, Hungary, and then into Crimea. So yeah, Ottomans are doing pretty good. Meanwhile, China, still a mess, though it doesn't actually look that much different, other than maybe a couple of new tags have popped out since the last time we looked. Nothing too interesting going on over in the Indian subcontinent, though our friend Timmy is just gone, reduced to atoms. A bunch of random little nations that either were a subject or their neighbor before have filled in the gaps. Hormuz is doing pretty good crossing the straits. Congo has united the Congo. Sub-Saharan Africa looks like 1444 to me, except for Mali. Mali got bopped. And I see a Spanish colony here because the colonial game has started with Portuguese over here in Brazil as well as down in Buenos Aires. And we have our first colony over here in Santo Domingo for the Spanish. The Norwegians are settling Newfoundland, which is pretty cool. There's usually a lot of fish that comes out of the Grand Bank fishery, so that's something to keep our eyes on. And then La Bermuda over here for the Spanish. And with a little over 200 years left, Denmark has showing absolutely no signs of stopping, expanding in literally every direction. They've expanded into Russia, they've expanded into Sweden, they've expanded into Poland, and they've expanded into the British Isles. So doing pretty well. France is also not doing well, but Spain is. It's hilarious. They just took Lisboa from Portugal, just Lisboa, the only this province, and it's fish. So yeah. It's a good province to take. The Ottomans continue to dominate regionally, but I don't know if they're going to go up hard against Denmark and Spain. I imagine that they would meet their maker. And Russia up in the north doing pretty well, though I feel like they're kind of getting outshined by Transoxiana, basically taking up the entirety of the Tartary, and then Key over here taking up northern China and all of Manchuria. And I always point it out whenever I see it, but how about Korea with 1444 borders? Just no changes. Just 1444 in nice. 1600. So I love it when this happens. Japan is united and they do have quite a bit of fish, so they are fairly buffed by the situation. Vietnam is actually dominating in southern China as well as just Southeast Asia in general. Malacca and Brunei make up the majority of the development in the Indonesian islands, but the Boner Boys have expanded not one, not two, but 3 provinces. Shout out the Boner Boys. Australia and New Zealand being colonized by the Spanish alongside the good old left coast of America. New Spain, which is actually up in Texas, as well as in Mexico, as well as in the Yucatan. They also have colonized the Spanish West Indies entirely outside of Sint Maarten here, which is the capital of Holland. The Spanish have claimed New Granada, Peru, all the way down into La Plata, and Brazil, but they are competing with Portugal over here, but they're winning. The British exclusively own Panama, and the French and Scottish colonies over here on the East Coast getting dominated. We have Frisian Alabama, which is funny because I've been told that Frisia is the Alabama of the Netherlands. Any Dutch boys watching? Let me know what you think about that. Vinland up here, and that is about it for North America. The Reformation came on pretty strong with Protestantism taking up the majority of the development in the East and Reformed over here in the West, as well as partially on the British Isles. It actually spawned up in Scotland and then also down in Switzerland, so makes sense. But honestly, Catholics still coming out very powerful at the end of it. And with a little over 200 years left, Spain with 3,200 development well out in front, followed by the Ottomans. And then Denmark with only 1,700 development, but that 1,700 development is working a lot for them considering how much fish they truly have. Enough so to give them the naval hegemon of the world, giving them some very solid bonuses, 20% artillery damage from the back row. So their artillery could shred some Ruskies and some Ottomans. Rounding out the rest of the top 8, we have Korea in the 4th spot, believe it or not, with Viet, Portugal, France, and then Russia in the number 8. Yo, look at the development in Korea. It's because of all the fish. Why expand when you don't need to? They got 45 dev here, 48, 49. My goodness, that is awesome. They are definitely playing to their strengths this time. It's 1821 and we just barely missed it by like 3 or 4 months. The Mamluks just pieced out, annexing the final provinces of a once great empire, not the Ottomans, but Turkey, because somehow they became Turkey. I assume it was through their mission tree, and they were a presidential dictatorship. Now, if we look a little bit up to the north, we're going to see a beefy Syria, and even farther up to the north, we're going to see a beefy Bulgaria, who actually has Constantinople in their provinces. So that's pretty cool. But who is this blue behemoth over here, you might say? Well, that is AQ. AQ is massive. They actually just lost a ton of land to Sind, like just in the last 20 years. But they were all of this over here, very massive. And speaking of very massive, obviously the big elephant in the room, Scandinavia, is now Russia, as well as Scandinavia, as well as like all of Eastern/Central Eastern Europe in general. But I love the fact that there's just this one province minor, Finland, like just chilling here. Like, I don't know why they're here, but they are. As well as like Spain has Kiev and some land in the Crimea. Why? I don't know. Like, they just do. Meanwhile, most of Europe has been consolidated between either Spain or Scandinavia. But you're going to see a couple of random people like Bohemia over there in Salzburg, Switzerland and Franconia, Liège, Friesland, still kicking up here with their capital in Friesland, and of course, the most honorable of men, the Isle of Man. The British Isles in general are just gross and I don't want to look at them. And something interesting must have happened when France occupied this, I believe, because London is called Domaine Francais. I think that's something from domination. But as far as Spain goes, yeah, they conquered quite a bit of land over here, as well as the majority of the development over here in the New World. They own a lot of it. Though my favorite thing about the New World is definitely Brazil over here, which is Portugal. They formed Brazil when they got exiled from Iberia. And then they have their subject of Brazilian Mexico, because Mexico is a subject of Brazil. But Brazil directly controls land up here in like Texas. Of course, Scandinavia has Vinland and New Scandinavia over here in like South and North Carolina. Florida, a French colony here. There was a United States and it was Dutch. But it is gone, sadly. But though we also have Brazilian Mexico having one province over here in like, what is this? Alabama? I think this is Louisiana. This is Alabama. I think this is Louisiana. This is Mississippi. And this is Alabama right here. Pretty sure. We have the best Greenland. We have French Greenland. And I mentioned before that Catholic was winning. Catholic definitely won. The entire New World, barring one province, Tunisian Canada, up here. I don't know how that's a thing, but Tunisian Canada, subject of Spain, is Sunni. In the south, it's all Catholic. They even converted quite a bit of land in the interior of Africa, as well as down in the south, but the rest is mostly Sunni, some Orthodox. And then, of course, we have the Buddhists of Dai Viet converting majority of the development in like all the way from Tibet, Southeast Asia, all the way over into Bengal, southern China. So that's pretty good to see. Spanish Australia is all Catholic. And you would have seen this earlier, but the Empire of Japan, cosmetic rename, looking good. Sadly, taking some land from Korea, so we can't have the perfect Korean borders that we're so used to. But while we're here, we have to take a look at some of these provinces. These fish provinces at 54 development, 52. That is absolutely insane. Japan in general is just very highly developed. Kyoto at 52. This one's a fish province over here at 61. No, that's coal. Coal, still not worth as much money as fish, by the way. And how about India? Gujarat, again, I feel like that happened a couple of videos ago, and I said, oh, Gujarat never conquers India. But they did again in this timeline. Shout out Armenia. Love you Armenian boys. Also, shout out Syrian Kurdistan. Culturally, definitely a lot of conversions by Lower Saxon and Pomeranian pushing down into Silesia. It looks like Brugge was converted to Walloon. So, sorry for that one. Turns out that this is not Occitania, it's Catalonia. And Umbrian was completely eradicated, replaced with Tuscan. When Vietnam decided to take over China, they decided to integrate into their cultural stuff. So they got Sino-Vietnamese. And we actually have Brazilians in Brazil this time, with Platinian and Portuguese taking up the rest of the subcontinent. With Platinian and Portuguese taking up the rest of the southern continent. Up north, it's actually almost exclusively Mexican over on the left coast, with Portuguese taking up the majority of the development in northern Mexico and Texas. Dutch culture in the Midwest. And the Dutch that formed America formed American culture. Very cool. Aside from that, we have Danish over here in New England, as well as what is this, Ontario, I think this region is. And then up here in James Bay, we have a Tunisian culture with Dutch and Danish culture. Quite the melting pot. And take a look at this. This province in Zeeland, or however that is pronounced, has the most base tax in the game at 28. It is indeed a fish province. And the smart ones among you will know that Zeeland is actually Copenhagen. 62 total development. Absolutely insane. Quite a few fish provinces in the world, and I'm not really seeing any crazy numbers. Bremen is pretty nuts in terms of development. 17 production, 17 in Finn, which is also in Denmark. Desmond in Ireland with 16, and Calais in northern France with another 16. Those numbers lead to some pretty crazy trade values, with almost 500 in in the Lubeck node, and then 240 in the English Channel. You can see down here, that is a lot more than what we got going on down here. 500 over here in Sevilla. So yeah, lots of trade in the world. If you guys have a suggestion of the next trade good and other changes you'd like to see, let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you like it and subscribe to the channel for more content to come, because you are missing out on a ton if you are not subscribed. Special thanks to ALS Gamer, Legrand Puba, Chio, Josh Kopczynski, Adden Rhino, Blonde Damon, Cannon Fodder, and many more. If you want to see your name here and early access to these videos, check out the join button below the video or the Patreon linked in the description.